In today's video, I will demonstrate how to create this cloth animation in Cinema 4D. Let's get started. This will be the model I will be using for today's tutorial. You can see the numerous layers in this model, and they have already been converted to a polygonal object. To begin, I'll select the shell object, right-click, go to Simulation Tags, and choose Cloth. However, when we preview it, you can see the shell just falls down. This is because we still need to make some adjustments to the settings. I will pause the preview and go to the Forces tab. In Gravity, I will change the value to 0. When I preview it again, the model just sits there floating. However, if I increase the value in wind strength to 5, you can see that the shell now reacts like a cloth. We have achieved the desired effect. However, I want the shell to stay in position and only have sections of the shell react as a cloth. I'll pause the preview and go to the Dresser tab. Here, we will focus on the Fixed Points section, which is where we specify which part of our objects we want to keep in position. To do this, we need to select the parts of our object that we want to remain still. I'll start by hiding these other objects so they are not in the way. I'll press and hold the Option key and click on these gray dots to hide them. Now I will choose the Points tool. I'll select the shell object and start selecting the areas I want to keep still. To assist with my selections, I will use the Loop Selection tool. I'll press the letter U on my keyboard, followed by the letter L, without moving my mouse. Great! Now I'll begin the selection process. I like the base to stay still, also the frame of the shell. I'll fast forward this section. When ready, go and select the Cloth tag. In the Dresser tab, under Fixed Points, press the Set button. You will see your selection points change color. This indicates that your points have been set. Now, let me return to my Move tool. If you wish to hide this selection, you can do by going back to the Fixed Point section. On the far right, you can uncheck the draw box. Now, the selection is hidden. I'll unhide my other objects and reset my camera position. To do this, I'll navigate to View and then select Frame Default. Perfect! It looks good now. When I hit Preview, we can now see that our selection remains in position while the rest behaves as a cloth. Now, I want the force of the wind to come from inside the shell rather than the outside. I'll pause the preview, and in the Forces tab, I will change the wind strength value to 0. Now head over to Simulate. Under Forces, select Attractor. It will be positioned in the center of your scene. However, I want to move it to be inside the center of my shell. I'll press the middle mouse button for my window preview. I will then move my attractor up towards the center of the shell. Perfect! I'll head back to my perspective view and hit Preview. However, instead of having the air push outside, it is sucking the air inside. That's because we need to change a value. In the attractor, we will change the strength value to -10. And now you can see the wind blowing outward. This looks great. Now it's time to add the tear effect. Go and select the cloth tag, and in the tag tab, head to the bottom and check the use tear box. The tear slider will now be active. This controls the amount of tear you want. Okay, now let's preview our tear. And, well, this doesn't look right. It's not tearing, it's just stretching. That's because we're missing one more step. Let me pause this. I'll select my shell object, and now I will go and create a generator. And that generator will be cloth surface. I'll drag this under my lights and drag my shell object under it. Perfect. You can see the polygon count has increased for our shell object. That's because if we select our cloth surface generator under object, you can see the subdivision's value is set to 1. If I reduce the value to 0, then you can see the shell go back to the original number of polygons it had. I'll leave it at 1. Now, this thickness here does what it says. It increases the thickness of your model. I'll leave that at 0. Now, if I hit preview, we can see that it's ripping. It's time to add the explosion effect. I'll pause this and select the cloth tag. In size, I'm going to make it 115%. I'll preview it, and well, it exploded. I'll make it 110% this time. Okay, this seems to keep more of the pieces together. What if I change it to 105%? This looks better. I like that it keeps most of its shape as it rips. I'll stop the preview now. I want to change the timing of when the tearing starts. I want the tearing to begin around here. I'll select my attractor, change the value to 0, and add a keyframe. I'll move a few frames forward, and then here I will set the strength to -10 and add another keyframe. I'll apply the same approach to the explosion effect. I'll select the cloth tag. I will change the size back to 100% and add a keyframe. I'll move a few frames forward and change the size value to 105% and add a keyframe. I will hit preview, and now we can see our explosion occurring later. However, I feel the explosion happens a bit slowly. I want the impact to be fast and not slow. To adjust this, I'll select my attractor and modify the keyframes in my timeline. If you don't see it, you can head over to Windows, then select Timeline Dope Sheet or Timeline F-Curve. Either one will work, as they open the same window. I'll choose Timeline F-Curve and select the Dope Sheet icon. Here I can see the keyframes. I'll change the duration of the size keyframes. Oops. I'll click away and then select the keyframe. Perfect. I'll do the same for the attractor keyframes. The effect now happens faster, but the explosion feels a bit slow. I'm going to increase the strength value of my attractor. Instead of -10, I'm going to make it -50. I'll add a keyframe and preview it. Perfect. This is what I wanted. However, I don't want it to have this many tears, So I'll go to the cloth tag and change the tear value to 130%. Okay, this is looking much better now. I want the torn pieces to fall down after the explosions. I'll move my timeline to the point where I want the torn pieces to start falling. I'll go to the cloth tag, specifically the forces tab, and for gravity, I'll leave the value at 0 and add a keyframe. I'll move a few frames forward, change the value to -1, and add another keyframe. When I preview it, we should now see the torn pieces fall down after the explosion. This looks great. However, there is one problem. When I look closely, I notice that the torn pieces go through the lip of the shell. I want the torn pieces to bounce off it and not pass through it. To fix this, I will select the shell lip object, right mouse click, go to simulation tags, and select cloth collider. This will not act as a collider for the torn pieces. Let's preview it. Unfortunately, this doesn't look good. The edge of the shell appears distorted. To quickly address this, I will animate when the cloth collider takes effect. I'll move to this point, which seems to be when the shell begins to tear into pieces. I'll select the cloth collider tag, add a keyframe to the Use Collider section. Oops, I forgot to uncheck the box. I'll add another keyframe. Then I'll move a few keyframes forward and activate the Use Collider box. I'll add another keyframe. Now, previewing all of this may slow down my computer, so I will perform a cache preview. I'll select the cloth tag, and in the Cache tab, I'll click the Calculate Cache button. Now, I'll just let it render. Perfect! Now, when I hit preview, I can see the torn cloth pieces bouncing off the lip of the shell. And there you have it. You now know how to create this cloth animation using Cinema 4D. If you found this video useful, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next one.